Hello and welcome. I am the Restless Kaiser and we are modelling for Advantage. So we've got another big show for you this week where we're going to focus on tanks. So last week's Friday video was our Prophecy of the Wolf unboxing, which I hope you enjoyed. Had a little bit of information about what the different members of the channel are going to do with the pieces of that box. And as for what's coming out this Friday, I'm not quite sure, to be honest. We've got several projects in the pipeline, all of which are nearing completion. We've got some World War II painting videos. We bought some bits from Rubicon, which Johnny B is kind of trying to put together. So we'll see how that goes. So I'm sorry I don't know yet at this stage, but we are trying to stick to the 2 videos a week for the meantime as we slowly ease our way out of this lockdown and we can get back to doing the battle reports, which I think is what a lot of you come here for. 2 bits of news for you this week. The first one is that Mantic made an announcement that they're going to be having to put their prices up quite soon. And I think that's a shame because I think for competing companies, and they compete directly with Games Workshop in terms of product line, I think price point is really important to keep them competitive. They do some interesting stuff. But in the meantime, you can still get hold of their existing product at a slight discount. So if there's any games that you're tempted by, you probably want to jump in on it now or you're going to see a significant price rise in the next few days. The other big bit of news this week, of course, is that Warhammer have announced their 9th edition in the preview that we had on Saturday. From what they've said so far, tentatively, so far so good. I'm one of these people that didn't want to see a new edition, but it sounds like it's more of an update rather than a brand new edition, and addressing some of the more egregious or silly parts of the rules. I realise the historical players out there, or exclusively historical players, probably think all of Warhammer is egregious and ridiculous. But for those of you that do play it, so they said that they were going to look at things like tanks being tagged by a Gretchen, not being able to act in the future and so forth. There are some really nice models in the kits that we've been previewed, and it looks like it's a good time for Necron players, provided they don't have too big a collection, because I noticed that they were redoing the Necron Warrior sculpts, and that will be a shame for anyone who's already got 60 or 100 of those guys and is hoping to use them again, and feels that they're not comfortable with that. Personally, I wouldn't care, but some people might do, and would rather see new items rather than refreshing existing ones. I don't know, we'll have to see. So, I'm going to talk to you through the route of this episode about Tanks, the tactical skirmish game from Gale Force 9. A lot of rivet heads probably think this game is trash and it's for kids, and they're probably right. I mean, it's got about as much to do with World War II as, well, a lot of war games, to be honest. It's a skirmish, it's basically car wars, but with tanks. I really like it because it's a game you can comfortably play within an hour and you don't have to take too seriously, and it's surprisingly tactical because of its initiative system. Unfortunately, it seems to come to the end of its life in the format that it's in now, and that includes Tanks the Modern Age, because they've done a kind of franchise deal with World of Tanks. I'm going to talk to you a bit more about that during the course of the episode, but first of all then, as Tanks is our feature, let's see what Mr. Johnny B has to offer.
Tanks this week, I'd like to share with you one of my prized possessions. Let's take a look. Boop. Oh, here it is, the Rogue Trader Land Raider. I used to have one of these as a kid. This is not it. This is an eBay salvage, but I have very fond memories of my brother running up to it and flipping the damn thing with a screamer killer. Yep, so there she is. Oh, she's a beauty. That's it for this week. Most probably catch you next week, eh? Back to you, Kaiser.
So, back to World of Tanks then, and Tanks, the skirmish game from Gale Force 9. So look, it looks like it's going to start with a new box set, which is going to include a tank from each of the big 4, and they say that they're pre-assembled and pre-painted, or reading the finer details, they're pre-assembled and primed, which is interesting, but the models they show on their advertising look exactly the same as their existing kits. So I don't know whether they've got some sort of army somewhere that's building up these models, or whether they're producing them in a different way. Meantime, let's hear from Mr. James Green.
So I have the repulsor here that I've fully magnetized. It's work in progress currently. I've not got around to polishing it up and getting it painted. But as you can see, I've left off the levitation pads, or whatever they're called, just for a bit of an easier time when I do come to painting it. So I've magnetized basically every weapon option you can get here, and there's only one that I've not bothered with, which is this just here, if you can see. These are like, you either have them or you don't, and it's a pain in the ass to get them off, so I've not bothered. Also, I've left it so that the top can come off completely. You can store the bits inside. So, as you can see with this, the twin las talons pop off, and you can replace them with heavy bolter. And there you can see that they're both in and easy to change. You can have the same effect with the Gatling cannon on the front. It's a little bit stiff, but it comes out, and as you can see, there's a if it will focus, it's not focusing, but there's a decently sized magnet on the back of that, and an equal one in there. So you can plonk the last cannon in. I'm not good with names, and it will hold nicely for your game. There's a lot of options here, and I will show you. So there's all these options, and it was fairly easy to magnetize. Watched a video on YouTube, much like the Kaiser's channel, just showing bits and bobs here and there, and invaluable to keep all the bits in. One of these. I'm not entirely sure what the sizes of magnets were, but I used 2 different diameters. I think it might be 2mm by 1mm and 3mm by 1mm, just going off the old memory. But yeah, highly recommend it. Don't want to buy too many of these. So if you can get one and do the job with it, highly recommend.
Thank you for that, James. I think a lot of people have considered doing that if they've bought a repulsor tank. I mean, it's a 50 quid model with a lot of different weapon options. Personally, I like the look of that tank. Not keen on the fact that there's a million different weapons, all of which have a different shooting profile. It takes a long time to execute a lot of shooting that's very, very similar. But anyway, back to World of Tanks. So they're talking about the stuff that we know. We know that you can no longer buy any of the World of Tanks stuff from Battlefront or Gale Force 9. And so what suppliers have is probably the last you're going to see in its current incarnation. They have released some stat cards from the game. So let's have a peek at them. So first up, let's have a look at the Cromwell. Cromwell, I've got the card here, and I'm having a look across there at the image that they have released, which you should be seeing on the screen. So it's 23 points, just the same. It says here, in my card it has an initiative of 8, which it does, a firepower of 4, which it does. My card has 1 point of armor, whereas this new card has 1 point of survivability. That seems like just a different way of producing the same information. It has 5 hit points, just like mine does, and it has a new stat called mobility of 3. This card doesn't have a mobility stat, but it does say on it, fast, this tank moves 3. So far, that card is identical. Next up then, the Sherman 75. The World of Tanks game describes this as an M4A1 Sherman 75. I'm pretty sure that this is an M4A3 Sherman 75. So let's see how different the stats are. Well, right off the bat, this is 20 points and that one is 18. So 2 points cheaper. Firepower 4 is the same. Mobility 2, we've discussed that previously. Survivability, initiative, all the same. Big difference, hit points. This one had 6, that one has 4. And that's interesting because I always felt this card was a little bit underpointed for having 6 hit points. And if that kind of thing is replicated through this new edition where they've made some tweaks, it's come down in points but it's lost a lot of hit points, it might make it actually a better game. Anyway, let's hear up next from Clueless Mike and see what he's got to show us.
Hi all, Clueless Mike here. So this week we're talking about tanks. Now you'll be all shocked to know, I'm sure, that I'm going to show you some red Space Marine tanks, because, well, I've got quite a few of them. So I'm going to start off, we have the basic Predator. This is a Bale Predator, the Blood Angels variant. Unfortunately, they're a little sad in the game nowadays. They're not really as tough as you want a tank to be. They don't carry as much firepower as the new Primaris ones, but I'm just not really a big fan of floating tanks for the Imperium. That's an Eldar thing. Next up, we have the Land Raider. Now, I've been playing 40k for a long time, and I remember the days when these things were nigh on indestructible engines of death. Again, now, they don't survive long enough. I still really like the model. This is one of my favourite ones, the Crusader. Still kind of have a use, but not really solid enough. And then we get to my favourite tank that I've got. So this is a Forge World Relic Sikaran battle tank. This in particular is my favourite. My wife bought me this for my first birthday after we got together. I spent a long time painting it. It's kind of the first miniature she ever bought me. So it has a special place in my heart. But also, I just love the model. This is so much more aggressive profile than the standard Space Marine tanks are. It looks just more angry if I bring it up nice and close to the camera there. I mean, obviously it's Forge World, so it's going to look a bit better sculpted and such. This one I've magnetized. I can swap all the weapons out and things like that. In game, it's pretty good. It's not kind of like Forge World broken in any way, but it's fast. It's got good firepower. And for me, it just looks like a proper aggressive futuristic sci-fi tank. And it also looks a bit like the Batmobile from the Christopher Nolan films. So there's no bad there. Let's see what other tanks people have got.
Thank you for that, Michael. So the Panzer IV, or the Panzer IV-H, as it's described in there, although it seems to be the same model with the Scherzen and so forth, fairly late war ones, the Gs and the Hs with the long 75. So again, firepower is the same, survivability is the same, initiative is the same, hit points is the same, and points are the same. This tank, I think, was on the money for its points, so fairly happy with that. And finally, the stats that we've seen, the T-34. So here's a big change, and here's a little bit of a potential cause for concern, is the T-34 here was 18 points, it's gone up to 20 on their card, and its initiative has changed from 4 to 6. 4 is slightly below average, 6 is slightly above average. It has lost a hit point by all accounts, but I think that the T-34 in World of Tanks game is significantly better as a value proposition than this one, because initiative is a very big deal in this game. A lot of World of Tanks or Wargaming EU is criticised for a bit of a Russian bias. I'm not able to comment on that because I don't play their video games, but I would say that that tank got a big improvement for sure. Up next, we'll hear from Mr. James Workshop.
Hello everybody, this week's episode is about tanks. So in this week's episode about tanks, I will talk about how I paint my tanks from tanks. The majority of my tanks for tanks are the official tanks from tanks that come in boxes like this with the relevant cards and sprues. The sprues are regular sprues that for most of the Russian tanks come in pairs. When constructing, I make sure to leave the body and turret separate from the tracks, as the body is sprayed white, representing the white winter wash applied to tanks of the period, and the tracks themselves are black to make them easier to paint. The green is then put back on with MiG Russian green, the tracks are highlighted with lead belcher and then muddied with Stirland mud. Some black pigment is used for the exhausts and the engine bay mesh, and some pinwash patina and metallic rust is added with Model Mate's Rusty Red. The effect on the vehicle is mostly achieved using a bit of sprue sponge, a dramatic recreation of which is being carried out on this T-34. Just get a small amount of the paint on a corner of the brush and carefully dab on any areas where the whitewash would have worn off, such as the point in the tank where you would mount and the tips of the turret. The large area is also applied where the designation number would be. Here you can see the front track linked with its rusty red and the engine bay and exhausts with black soot, as well as the tracks dry brush silver and generously coated with Stirland mud. Apply extra rusty red as preferred, and the canvas here is painted with Rakarth flesh. For the numbers, I use the waterfly transfers seen here. I'm red green colourblind, and the tanks use Polish white stars instead of the probably more accurate red. Here's a variety of completed tanks, a simple scheme for our playing pleasure. And that is how I paint my tanks for tanks. It's a nice, simple, quick paint job. I'm going to keep painting them the same way for Flames of War, which I'm just starting to get into. Yeah. Thank you very much for watching, and back to the studio.
Thank you for that, James. Speaking of Russian bias, well, the tanks then, I'm interested to see what comes of it, and particularly my greater concern from what I see of this game, it looks fairly comparable. It looks like a new edition that's been repackaged. I'm pretty confident that even though they're releasing new models, that the ones that I've already got and have put time in painting, I can continue to use those. I'm sure might have to wait a while for some stat cards. With Tanks the Modern Age, I'm not sure where that would fit within the World of Tanks franchise, whether they do stuff that goes up to the 1980s, 1990s, because if they don't, that game has been cancelled too. of the two games, I would have much preferred to have seen a second edition of Tanks: The Modern Age, because some things were quite horribly out of kilter in terms of their points values. So I hope that that game comes back in some format, because it really needed a bit of tidying up in that area. So for each point in the show, I recommend a YouTuber to you, usually quite a small YouTuber who some of you will hopefully know, but many of you won't. Today, I'm going to hand over to Weatherpig, who's pretty new on the scene, I think. He does some great stuff in a really wide variety of different painting. He paints fantasy and historicals, but he also does stuff like, you know, 1/35th tanks, and I'm really interested in the kind of crossover between gaming and model making and so forth, because I think traditionally they're really different, whereas I think now the lines are getting a lot more blurred and we're all benefiting a lot from it. So here's Weatherpig, check him out.
Hi, I go by The Weatherpig. I'm an Australian-based model painting YouTube channel really focused on variety and learning, both hopefully you learning from what I'm doing and what I know so far, and also me learning from you, me learning from experimentation, and hopefully we can improve together. I also focus on variety. I'm currently working on scale tanks, Warhammer 40k, Warhammer AOS, Gundam of various grades. I even recently did a non-scale kit, which was my Toon Tank, which Kaiser himself said that he enjoyed. And as an exclusive for the Modeling Advantage viewership, I want to show off what I did with that Toon Tank. This will be a video coming soon, a cute little diorama I did that I really enjoyed, and I hope this really shows the variety I'm going to, in that I simply want to do a diorama. I had a Toon Tank, some scale figures, but that's not going to stop me from mashing them together and experimenting. So at the moment, I'm primarily doing a weekly show called Raining Paints, where I detail every step of the projects I'm working on. It's all heavily edited with music and scripting, and I really enjoy it, and I hope that people can learn something from it, and most of all, I just hope people enjoy it. I'd like to thank Modeling for Advantage for giving me this opportunity. I think they're a great channel, and I very much enjoy them, so thank you.
Thank you for that. The Toon Tank, I did like that. I mean, I don't know how cartooning works. That thing looks like a Panzer IV without looking anything like a Panzer IV. How they choose which bits and so forth always fascinates me. Looks cool. Anyway, let's have a look at one of Clueless Mike's Demon Princes. Take it away, Michael.
Next up, we have a Corn Demon Prince. So this model here, I basically made up because I was playing my demons quite a lot start of last year, and they have a relic which is a massive demonic axe, and I wanted a Corn Demon Prince to take that relic, and I didn't really have a model that was particularly appropriate for it, so I made one. So this one comes from, I'm trying to remember its name, it's a Korgorath. It's a Corn fantasy model. I believe it may only come in one of the Start Collecting boxes. It's kind of like a bone blood beast. All these bones on its back, some of those are kind of like lurching out of the model when you buy it, so I kind of like cut those down, stuck them into the grooves in the flesh that they come in, and then green stuffed around them a tiny bit to make them fit. This is a Juggernaut head, you can see on the side there. The head that comes with the model is really strange. It's kind of like a minute head with a mass amount of horns sticking out the top of it. So I cut off all the horns, green stuffed on the Juggernaut head, and then stuck various of the horns back onto the Juggernaut head. And I think it looks reasonably good there. It looks a little like a dog, but that's what they're supposed to look like. It's got this big fleshy and bony claw over here. The wings are from the Fantasy Undead Varghul kit. The kit comes with 3 different sets of wings. If you're looking to buy them, be careful, because some of them are weirdly posed and wouldn't go well on the back of a Demon Prince model. But these ones I found actually fit quite well. They're a little small, but I again quite like that, as he looks like he just runs at you and just uses them to aid in leaping. Round here to his axe. The axe is a spare axe from a Bloodthirster kit. The hand, though, is another Mortarion part. So the hand and the bit of the haft of the axe below the hand, they are part of Mortarion's second pose of silence, which is his massive scythe. So that's just lopped off there and stuck on. Okay, so that is the Corn Prince.
That's all there is this week, folks. So where you can, stay home, stay safe, take care of each other, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye. Please remember to like, comment, share or subscribe this video, and if you are buying new games or new miniatures, please consider following our affiliate link to Wayland Games. It gives us a little bit of kickback and helps fund other projects for the channel.
Hello folks, this week sees us looking at tanks, and I'm going to show you one of my prized possessions. Let's go take a look. Oh, boop! Hey folks, this week sees us looking at 40k, no it doesn't. So this week sees us looking at tanks, and I'd like to show you one of my prized possessions. It's tough being popular.